Imagine, for just a second, that the door to your home closes today and you are literally not allowed to freely walk out of it for 10 years.
Just, wow, 10
Right,
years.
10 years. You can't casually stroll down the street to grab a coffee. You can't, pop over to a neighbor's house for a quick chat.
Yeah, all those little daily routines are just gone.
Completely gone. You can't even be seen walking from your car to your front door carrying too many grocery bags.
Oh, because of the footprint, right.
Exactly. Because someone might wonder, how many people actually live inside this apartment? And if someone does happen to catch you outside, you cannot use your real name.
Which is terrifying.
They have to invent a fake identity, a complete fictional life story, on the spot, just to exist in the world without raising suspicion.
The level of sensory deprivation and social starvation inherent in that kind of scenario, it basically strips away the fundamental biological requirements of human existence.
Yeah, we really aren't built for that.
We're not. We are not designed to operate in a vacuum. The human nervous system, it relies on these micro interactions to regulate itself.
Like, what kind of interactions?
Like just a nod from a barista or making eye contact with a neighbor. Severing that connection completely forces the brain into the state of perpetual agonizing freefall.
Well, and the crazy thing is, this isn't a dystopian novel.
Yeah.
It's the literal reality of Astrid Holleeder.
Yeah.
She's a lawyer who basically traded a normal life for a decade of suffocating isolation.
Yeah.
So today we're taking a deep dive into an incredible transcript from a Dutch interview series called Mission: Mental Strength.
It's hosted by Di Carter, right?
Yes, exactly. And we are going to explore the raw mechanics of human survival, the mental weight of keeping secrets, and, how someone rebuilds their identity when every external pillar of their life is just destroyed.
It's a fascinating source material.
It really is. Okay, let's unpack this because the dynamic between the two people in this source is what sets the stage perfectly. Di Carter is a former Special Forces commando.
Right, so his whole background is survival.
His entire career was built on being dropped into hostile environments and surviving.
But I think there is a really profound difference between the survival Di Carter experienced and the survival Astrid Holleeder endured.
Oh, absolutely. How so?
Well, a special forces operator undergoes modular systemic psychological conditioning. They are heavily resourced.
They have backup.
Exactly. They have extraction protocols, encrypted communications, entire teams dedicated to monitoring their vitals and their environment. Their survival is a calculated, well-oiled machine.
Right. And then you look across the table at Astrid, a civilian.
Yeah.
A mother and a grandmother.
Yeah.
Who made this agonizing decision to testify against her own brother, who, by the way, was a highly notorious figure in the criminal underworld.
Which just changes the stakes entirely.
Completely. She was thrust into a decade-long life-or-death undercover operation with absolute zero preparation.
Zero.
It's comparable to, taking someone who has never learned to swim, throwing them into the middle of the ocean during a Category 5 hurricane, and then somehow, miraculously, they figure out how to tread water for 10 years.
That's a great analogy. And what's fascinating here is that we need to analyze that adaptation through the lens of mental resilience.
Right.
We're looking at why humans adapt the way they do under unimaginable pressure. Because, her isolation didn't occur like a light switch flipping off.
No, it was a process.
Right. The transcript reveals a creeping, insidious process. She actually uses the metaphor of the boiled frog to describe it.
Oh, the idea that if you put a frog in tepid water and slowly turn up the heat, it doesn't realize it's boiling to death until it's far too late.
Exactly. She says the life was sucked out of her degree by degree.
And she makes a very sharp distinction about who was actually turning the dial on that heat.
Yes, this is crucial.
She states clearly that she was inside because of her brother, but she couldn't go outside because of the government.
That statement fundamentally challenges how we view institutional protection.
Right, because the threat of violence originated from her family, but the mechanics of her daily imprisonment were manufactured by bureaucratic failure.
Exactly. Institutions operate on a foundation of protocols and budgets. They equate a physical barrier with absolute security.
Like you're behind a locked door, so you're safe.
Right. But human life is dynamic. It's not a static item on a checklist.
And here's where it gets really interesting. She uses a specific Dutch term to describe her status, vogelvrij.
Vogelvrij.
Yeah, it translates roughly to being declared an outlaw, or literally bird-free.
Wow, bird-free.
It means you are entirely stripped of legal protection. You are fair game for anyone. She testified with the government's promise of adequate protection, And the reality of that protection was almost farcical.
It was a disaster.
Imagine being handed a DIY witness protection kit. It's like being told you're playing a high-stakes game of hide-and-seek, but only the assassins know the rules.
Yeah, like she had a panic button that didn't work.
A panic button that didn't work, and an emergency hotline that rang out to nowhere.
This really exposes the dangerous friction between a rigid bureaucracy and a fluid civilian reality.
Totally.
The government provided her with what they deemed a safe apartment on a higher floor. On paper, that fulfills their obligation. But they failed to account for the ecosystem of her life.
Right. They didn't hand her a blank check and say, stay inside, we'll cover your mortgage.
She was a practicing lawyer.
She had to earn a living, which meant she had to leave that safe apartment, walk down through an exposed, highly dangerous portico in her neighborhood, and travel to her firm every single day.
The government's idea of safety basically forced her into a daily gauntlet.
It did. Every day was a massive risk.
Consider the anticipatory anxiety required for that commute. Every single time she approached that portico, her autonomic nervous system had to brace for a potential assassination attempt.
Just to go to work.
Cortisol and adrenaline would flood her bloodstream just to walk to her car. And unlike the commando sitting across from her, she had no tactical training on how to mitigate that physiological response.
Not at all.
Di Carter actually mentions that in special operations, maintaining a cover identity involves exhaustive training on how to manage your psychological footprint.
But Astrid was handed nothing but silence.
Just figure it out yourself.
She actually asked the authorities for a playbook. She told them, he knows our license plates, he knows where we live, why aren't we moving?
And their response.
Essentially, figure it out yourself. It's like giving someone a broken umbrella during a catastrophic flood.
Yeah, it technically counts as cover, but it fundamentally ignores the physics of the threat.
So she had to invent entire identities, calling herself Sasha or Simone, just to interact with her neighbors.
Which is exhausting. The cognitive load of maintaining a fabricated reality is immense.
I can't even imagine.
To survive in that environment, you cannot afford to be merely invisible. You must be aggressively uninteresting.
Aggressively uninteresting. I like that phrasing.
If you are a neighbor and you observe a woman who never attends the street party, never stops for casual conversation, and is always inside, your pattern recognition instincts kick in.
You get curious.
You become curious. And human curiosity is the most lethal variable to someone in hiding.
Because curiosity leads to questions, and questions blow your cover.
Exactly.
So she told people she was a nanny.
Oh, that's clever.
It is, right?
Oh.
It's a narrative that makes logical sense and shuts down further probing. But it requires constant, exhausting calculation.
You have to remember every lie you've ever told.
She points to Di Carter's camouflage shirt during the interview and tells him, you adapt to your environment, that's what I did all day.
Except her camouflage wasn't tactical gear, it was the subjugation of her own personality.
She became a chameleon out of sheer terror, not strategy.
But to truly understand the architecture of her mental state during those 10 years in the apartment, we have to recognize that the foundation was already fractured.
Okay, what do you mean?
The isolation was just the final layer. The source material forces us to rewind the timeline and examine the 30 years prior to her going into hiding.
In 30 years. Let that sink in.
It's a lifetime.
From the time she was 17, her entire existence was co-opted to manage her brother's secrets and keep him out of prison.
Which takes an unimaginable physical toll.
It does, and the transcript brings up a psychological study regarding the physical weight of secrets that fundamentally changes how you perceive mental burdens.
Ah, yes. The concept of embodied cognition.
Okay, let's unpack this for the listener. What exactly is that?
Well, the study you're referring to demonstrates that the brain does not neatly compartmentalize emotional trauma away from physical perception.
So it's all connected.
Deeply connected. Researchers found that individuals harboring significant, heavy secrets actually perceive their physical environment as more demanding.
Wait, like literally perceiving the world differently?
Yes. When asked to estimate the steepness of a hill, participants carrying heavy secrets judged the gradient to be significantly steeper. And they judged the physical effort required to climb it as much greater than those without secrets.
So they aren't just emotionally exhausted. Their brain is actively tricking their visual cortex into seeing a mountain where there's only a moderate incline.
Precisely. The secret possesses a tangible gravitational pull.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? When you look at the science of keeping secrets, it makes you reevaluate normal life.
It really does.
Think about the unspoken financial struggles, the hidden addictions, or the toxic family dynamics people cover up every day.
It's exhausting.
You aren't just stressed. Your brain is literally making the hill you're walking up look steeper.
The mechanism behind that is cognitive dissonance, stretched over 3 decades.
For 30 years, she had to fracture her identity to survive.
Yes, the two Astrids.
Right. There was lawyer Astrid, an officer of the court who operated within the boundaries of civil society, played on a basketball team, and believed in the rule of law.
And then there was family Astrid.
Exactly. The Astrid, who is deeply enmeshed in the volatile, lethal dynamics of the criminal underworld to protect her brother.
How does the human brain even reconcile that?
I have no idea. She is sitting in a courtroom, advocating for justice, and then going home to manage information that could lead to someone's execution.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it reconciles it through intense, destructive rationalization.
Like making excuses for the behavior.
When two conflicting realities are held in the mind simultaneously, the psychological discomfort is agonizing. The brain seeks to alleviate that tension by creating justifications.
So what was her justification?
She tells her audiences now that when she first started keeping secrets, she felt honored.
Honored.
She felt trusted. That initial feeling of importance acts as the rationalization, but the honor quickly metastasizes into a cage.
You lose your freedom because every single interaction becomes an algorithm. What can I say? Who am I talking to?
Will this piece of information contradict the other piece of information I gave someone else yesterday?
It's exactly. Living in two contradictory realities destroys your baseline of truth.
Because the lawyer Astrid viewed the law as a shield against the arbitrary violence she grew up with.
But the family Astrid was forced to enable behavior that violently undermined that very shield.
That level of dissonance erodes the authentic self until the pressure inevitably breaches the containment.
And the breach happened because of her sister, Sanja.
That was the catalyst.
Astrid reached a point where continuing to keep the secret didn't just mean protecting her brother. It meant becoming actively complicit in the murder of more people.
With her own sister at the top of the list.
The penalty for going to the police was death.
That is the ultimate moral threshold. She weighed the imminent physical danger of testifying against the spiritual decay of remaining silent.
She had to make a choice.
She realized she could not endure the cognitive dissonance of having her sister's blood on her hands. Testifying was an act of profound self-preservation.
But not of her physical body, right?
No, self-preservation of her moral core.
Yet the immediate reward for that moral choice was the 10 years of isolation.
A terrible reward.
And here is the part of her timeline that I found incredibly difficult to process.
What's that?
Even while she was locked away, terrified, and totally isolated, she was still putting everyone else first.
Oh, absolutely. Her deeply ingrained habit of being the caretaker did not shut off just because she was in hiding.
No, it didn't.
We are looking at the inertia of childhood trauma. A change in physical environment does not instantaneously rewire decades of psychological conditioning.
She reveals in the interview that she had been the primary caregiver in her family since she was 4 years old.
4 years old.
Her mother instructed her to rub her sister's back constantly, so the sister wouldn't choke to death from severe asthma.
So her entire conceptualization of self-worth was built around preventing the death of others.
Therefore, when she entered the extreme isolation of hiding, she imported that exact same operating system.
She endured the psychological torture of the safe house specifically to protect her family from the collateral damage of her own potential assassination.
Right. She structured her survival around her granddaughter, who suffered from epilepsy.
This part is just heartbreaking.
She made a conscious pact to stay in hiding, living in terror, until that child turned 12.
Why 12 specifically?
Because she calculated that if she stepped outside and was murdered, the sheer shock and trauma of the assassination would trigger a fatal epileptic seizure in her granddaughter.
Wow.
She is actively being hunted by hitmen, and her primary focus is orchestrating the timing of her own death so it doesn't cause a secondary medical emergency.
It is the absolute zenith of living for external utility.
She completely masked her internal suffering from her family.
She did not express her loneliness. She did not confess that she was standing on the edge of the roof of her building, seriously contemplating jumping just to end the psychological agony.
Because if she showed weakness, she felt she was failing them.
She had to perform the role of the strong one because, in her conditioned mind, expressing vulnerability equated to becoming a burden.
But no human being has infinite bandwidth for that kind of pressure. A breaking point has to occur.
It's inevitable.
And it all culminated in a specific 3.5-week window.
Oh, when everyone left.
Yes, by sheer coincidence, her family members, the people she was dedicating every waking second to protecting, all traveled abroad at the same time.
Suddenly, the apartment was truly empty.
No check-ins, no external impulses. She literally survived on cans of beans for weeks.
Just absolute suffocating silence.
So I have a question about this.
Yeah.
How does someone whose entire identity is built on being useful to others survive when all those people are removed?
Well, this raises an important question about human connection. Dike Carter zeroes in on that silence, identifying it as the apex of mental challenge.
The hardest part.
Extreme silence removes the daily noise that we use to regulate our identities. When you strip away work routines, social obligations, and the physical presence of the people you care for, what remains? Just you.
For a person whose entire psychological framework is constructed around being useful to others, the sudden absence of those people triggers a catastrophic existential crisis.
If the only equation that gives your life meaning is, I matter because I keep you alive, what happens to you when you is removed from the room?
Do you just vanish?
She is standing on that roof, alone, eating beans, with zero distractions, and she realizes she is facing a brutal binary decision.
A literal life or death choice.
She either jumps off the roof, or she does something she has never attempted in her entire 60 years on Earth. She has to learn to love herself.
In that crushing silence, she underwent what many psychological and spiritual frameworks describe as an ego death.
An ego death. Let's dig into that.
The ego is the construct of the self that interacts with the external world. It plays the roles of the savior, the lawyer, the strong sister.
For all the masks we wear.
Exactly. When the external world was removed, those roles disintegrated. She had to locate a reason to exist that was entirely uncoupled from another human being's need for her. She describes this transition using the author Eckhart Tolle, noting that when the environment becomes quiet enough, you automatically start talking to God.
But she immediately grounds that concept, right?
She does. She clarifies that talking to God is essentially deep, unfiltered self-talk.
It is communicating with the universe, recognizing your place in something vastly larger than your immediate circumstances.
And the terminology she uses to describe the result of that process is striking. She says she developed a titanium core.
A titanium core.
And she is incredibly specific that this titanium core is devoid of ego. In fact, it requires the destruction of the ego.
She argues that true resilience is born from realizing how profoundly insignificant you are in the grand scheme of the universe.
I found that concept really challenging at first,
How so?
Society generally teaches us that strength comes from asserting your importance. The idea that you become indestructible only when you realize you don't matter feels entirely paradoxical.
It challenges the Western paradigm of self-esteem, certainly. When behavior is driven by ego, cognitive energy is constantly expended on managing perception, controlling outcomes, and validating your own importance.
Which is exhausting.
It is exhausting. When you surrender, when you accept your microscopic place in a massive universe, the pressure to perform evaporates.
The masks come off.
The exhausting roles fall away. You are left with the stripped-down, fundamental essence of who you are. That fundamental essence doesn't need external validation to survive.
That is the titanium.
Exactly.
And locating that titanium core is what finally gave her the leverage to step outside, to step into the light, face the public, and tell her story, regardless of the physical danger or the opinions of the people she used to protect.
She finally chose herself.
But here is the harsh reality of trauma. Achieving a philosophical or spiritual breakthrough on a rooftop does not magically rewrite your neurobiology.
No, it doesn't.
She re-entered the world, but her brain's threat detection system was permanently altered.
Spiritual clarity does not communicate with the amygdala.
The fear center, right?
Yeah. Yes. The amygdala, the fear processing center of the brain, is entirely focused on pattern recognition and survival. And her neurological maps were drawn in environments of extreme, unpredictable violence long before she ever went into hiding.
The transcript brings up the era of the Heineken kidnapping.
A very dark time.
She describes a specific childhood memory, waking up in the pitch dark, the door to her bedroom being literally blown off its hinges, and men armed with machine guns standing over her bed.
Horrifying.
She and her sister were lying there, absolutely convinced they were seconds away from execution. She says that since that exact moment, she has never, ever slept in a dark room again.
That is the neuroplasticity of fear.
Her brain just wired itself that way instantly.
In that moment of absolute terror, her brain forged a permanent synaptic connection between darkness plus sudden noise and imminent death.
So logic doesn't even enter into it.
No. The prefrontal cortex, which handles logic and reasoning, is bypassed entirely when that threat pattern is recognized. Decades later, that neurological tripwire is still fully active.
She operates in a state of perpetual hypervigilance.
She provides a detailed breakdown of her internal threat assessment during a recent public event, and it reads like a tactical manual.
It really does. She has heavy security now, but her internal radar is always spinning.
Always.
She describes a moment where an unfamiliar woman approached to escort her. Immediately, her brain flags an anomaly. She thinks, this is exactly the tactic my brother would use. He would send a woman to bypass my suspicion.
But notice how she handles the physiological spike of adrenaline in that moment.
Right, she doesn't panic.
She doesn't freeze and she doesn't panic. She employs a tactical evasion maneuver.
She fakes a bathroom trip.
She feigns the need to use the restroom simply to buy time and space.
It's brilliant.
She uses that walk to the door to conduct a methodical visual scan of the unknown woman.
Looking for clues.
She is actively searching for the necessary data points of legitimate security, the presence of a weapon, the outline of a ballistic vest, the specific postural cues of trained law enforcement.
And her analysis doesn't stop at the door. Before she enters the transport vehicle, she is scanning the interior.
Does the labeling match the protocol?
Exactly. And when the driver takes an unexpected turn onto a secondary road, her immediate reflexive thought is, I have been lured into a trap.
Every second of her life is processed through the filter of a high-stakes intelligence operation.
It's like learning to read the Matrix. Just like a kid knows exactly what mood their parent is in just by the sound of the key turning in the front door, a victim reads the micro-expressions of their abuser.
Which leads us to what is arguably the most sociologically critical insight in the entire transcript.
This part blew my mind.
She articulates a concept that has the potential to fundamentally rewire how law enforcement, the judicial system, and society at large interact with victims of chronic long-term abuse.
It's massive.
She introduces the concept of the victim as the predictor.
That completely flips the traditional law enforcement script.
It does.
She argues that victims of domestic abuse or coercive control are routinely dismissed by authorities as being hysterical, overly emotional, or paralyzed by irrational anxiety.
Which is such a harmful stereotype.
But she forcefully corrects the record. They are not just feeling emotions. They are highly trained empirical behavioral analysts.
It is a vital and necessary reframing of the victim experience.
Think about it. If a victim says, it's too quiet, it's not paranoia.
Right. If a woman who has endured 20 years of psychological and physical abuse contacts the police and says, the house is too quiet right now, something catastrophic is about to happen, standard protocol often dictates logging that as the victim experiencing anxiety.
Dismissing it as feelings.
Astrid points out that this is not generalized free-floating panic. It is the precise recognition of a deadly, ingrained pattern.
Because they've seen this exact setup before.
The absence of noise is data.
Silence is data.
Astrid explains that if her brother suddenly isolated himself, stopped making phone calls, and wasn't receiving visitors, an outside observer or a police officer might conclude, excellent, he's quiet, there is no immediate threat.
Oh, because nothing bad is actively happening in that exact second?
But she, possessing decades of behavioral data on him, knew exactly what that silence meant.
What did it mean?
It meant he was systematically clearing his alibi. He was ensuring he had zero connections to the outside world, precisely because he had ordered an assassination.
The silence itself was the weapon.
Precisely. If we begin treating a victim's fear not as emotional instability, but as objective, predictive data, as the most accurate intelligence available, it would revolutionize domestic protection protocols.
It's treating them as the expert on their own abuser.
Astrid had 60 years of unbroken field training in analyzing her brother's behavior. She didn't need physical proximity to him to know his next move.
She could read it in the cadence of his legal maneuvers and the way he manipulated associates.
She was the ultimate predictive algorithm.
But the human body isn't a machine. How do you live as a walking radar detector and not completely burn out your nervous system?
You have to find a framework to manage it.
Right. The interview concludes by looking at how she manages this reality today, using Dyke Carter's 4 pillars of mental strength: physical, cognitive, emotional, and spiritual.
And the way she applies these is anything but conventional.
Definitely.
Breaking resilience down into those four distinct channels allows us to see exactly where trauma causes lasting friction and where neuroplasticity allows for profound growth.
Let's start with the physical. Her assessment of her own physical pillar is incredibly transparent.
She admits the physical pillar is her weakest link.
Because 10 years confined indoors drastically deteriorates the physical body.
It atrophies.
She agrees to start training with Dai, but she notes that what she really misses is the community of her old basketball team.
Which highlights that physical resilience isn't just about the mechanical movement of muscles.
It's deeply tied to moving in synchronization with other people.
Contrast that physical deterioration with the absolute mastery she achieved in the cognitive pillar.
She really dialed that in.
To survive the sensory deprivation and the crushing terror of the safe house, she had to become the master of her own neurology.
She actively utilized intense cognitive behavioral frameworks to interrupt catastrophic thought loops.
She learned how to manually override the brain's tendency to spiral into despair.
But the cognitive control she developed in isolation didn't just stop at her thoughts. It fundamentally altered how she engaged with people in the emotional pillar.
This is a really complex part of her journey.
Okay, let's unpack this, because she threw a massive curveball here that I'm still trying to wrap my head around.
The empathy piece.
Yes. Society tells us from day one that empathy is the ultimate virtue. The more empathetic you are, the better human you are.
That's the standard narrative, yeah.
But Astrid explicitly states her current goal is to learn how to be less empathetic.
Are we really saying that trauma recovery requires you to shut off your humanity? Well, we have to analyze the utility of empathy within the context of a predatory dynamic.
Okay, explain that.
In a healthy relationship, empathy fosters connection. In an abusive dynamic, empathy is a massive exploitable liability.
The liability, wow.
Predators and abusers actively weaponize the empathy of their victims. They rely on the victim to rationalize their toxic behavior, to continuously give them the benefit of the doubt.
And to prioritize understanding the abuser's painful childhood over holding them accountable for their current violent actions.
Exactly. She actually says she used to constantly lead with her head. Her body would give her a gut feeling that a situation was dangerous, but her brain would immediately step in and politely rationalize it.
Like, oh, maybe they're just stressed. Let's hear them out.
She was using empathy to override her own biological alarm system.
Which is why discarding that specific application of empathy is a crucial evolution in her survival.
She is prioritizing somatic signals, the physical reactions of her nervous system, over polite social rationalization.
She listens to her body now.
True emotional intelligence in her specific context requires absolute ironclad boundaries.
She explains that now, if an interaction gives her a negative visceral feeling, she terminates contact immediately.
There are no second chances.
There's no agonizing internal debate about why the person acted that way.
Zero regret. Her continued existence relies on that emotional ruthlessness.
It's a radical reclamation of her own safety. It's trusting the animal instinct over the social conditioning.
And that hard-won boundary setting feeds directly into her spiritual pillar.
After enduring a lifetime of manipulation, secrets, and 10 years in a cage, her ultimate mission isn't revenge.
No, it's not.
It isn't even finding a quiet beach to retire on. Her mission is to become an operational blueprint for others who are trapped in seemingly impossible situations.
She specifically directs her message toward individuals who cannot physically alter their circumstances.
Like who?
People bound by intense caregiving duties, individuals entrenched in toxic family structures, or spouses paralyzed by financial or physical threats.
People who feel completely stuck.
She is demonstrating that even when your physical environment is an inescapable cage, you retain absolute authority over your internal cognitive landscape.
She wants to show people how to locate possibilities within an impossible reality.
It's incredibly powerful.
Think about this. This is a woman who cannot even carry her own trash to the curb without a trained security detail scanning the perimeter.
Right.
Yet she sits down at a microphone, unpacks her deepest trauma, and attempts to throw a lifeline to someone she will never meet, listening somewhere in the dark.
It is the ultimate transmutation of trauma. She took the mechanisms of her own destruction and reforged them into tools of purpose and instruction.
We've tracked an unbelievable timeline today.
We really have.
We watched the creeping, insidious nature of the boiled frog reality, fueled by catastrophic institutional failure.
We analyzed the tangible physical gravity of carrying lethal secrets for 3 decades.
We saw what happens when the external world goes utterly silent, forcing an ego death and the radical choice to locate a titanium core of self-love.
And we explored how the traumatized brain doesn't just suffer, it weaponizes its own fear into a hyper-tuned predictive radar for survival.
Which requires the absolute destruction of polite empathy.
The adaptability of the human mind when pushed past the boundaries of conventional endurance is just staggering.
It is.
But the mechanisms she utilized are not exclusive to extreme survival scenarios.
Exactly. When you look at the science of keeping secrets, or the concept of the victim as a predictor, it forces you to look closely at normal life.
Your own life.
You might not be dodging assassins, but you might be managing the unspoken resentments in your family.
You might be feeling the physical weight of hiding a financial crisis to protect your image.
You might be continuously using empathy to rationalize the toxic behavior of a colleague or a partner, ignoring your own somatic alarms.
The friction she experienced is the extreme version of the daily battles of being human.
So well said.
We spent significant time unpacking how the traumatized brain functions as a prediction machine, constantly mapping the behaviors of the people we are closest to. So I want to leave you with a concept to examine in your own environment. Ask yourself, what behaviors are you unconsciously predicting in your daily life?
That's a deep question.
What subtle micro-expressions in your boss, your partner, or your family members dictate your actions and your mood before you even consciously process them?
Like that feeling when the key turns in the door.
Exactly. And most importantly, are those automatic predictions keeping you safe, or are they quietly keeping you trapped in a behavioral pattern you desperately need to break?
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious.